Hi, Peter Charles here, Folk to Fly Fly Fishing. And today let's talk about using long leaders off the end of Sinktips. Now, I have brought this up before. And, I still get people saying, oh no, you can't do that, you can't do that. I want you to think about something for a moment. If you think a long leader off the end of a sink tip doesn't work, consider this. I normally fish these downforce flies of mine. They're unweighted, they're just tied on a heavy hook. I normally fish those off of intermediate lines or often floating lines with just nothing more than a long fluorocarbon leader. You know, if I'm spey casting, it could be as much as 15 foot, sometimes a little longer. What's interesting about that is these flies on the end of a long leader, a long fluorocarbon leader, in a walking pace current is going to be running about that much under the water, okay? Somewhere between 18 inches and 2 feet on average. Now, consider that if you took that same leader, same fly, and put it on the end of the sink tip, isn't it going to be about that much below the end of the sink tip? Well, of course, it will be. In practically, it'd be even deeper because the currents down lower are slower. So it's probably even a greater distance separation from the end of the sink tip. So if you have a fly that can get down fast and stay down like these downforce flies, you can use very long leaders off the end of your sink tips. Now, there's this notion that sink tips will pull flies down, that you have to pull the fly down. Well, I don't think in those terms. I think of the fly getting down on its own. I don't want to put my system together in a way there that I'm relying on the sink tip to pull the fly down. All of my flies that I use on the end of the sink tips sink quickly, and they penetrate very well. And that's important for a number of reasons. I've done this on a number of occasions, and I've actually had the experience where I've looked at my own flies in the water. And I've gone up on the bank, and I've looked down either at a client's fly or a friend's fly, and they're using a high drag fly that's somewhat buoyant. And they could be using as much as 12 foot of T14. And guess what? For a good part of the arc of their swing, they're about that much under the water what the fly is. So the whole thing is a U. So what, and that's on as much as 12 foot of T14. I've had a worse experience on the Niagara River with a rabbit strip tube on an aluminum tube. And I was using an airflow type 9 beach line, which is actually more dense than T14. It's more like T15. And it's 36 foot long. Full sink shooting head. And it could not pull that fly down. That fly was up in the water column and there was this big U. It wasn't till the end of that, the bottom of that hit a current, because in the Niagara River there's currents going in every which direction, that it finally got pulled under. But just sinking? No. It's the fly stayed at the top. So even a type 9 full sink shooting head that weighed 530 grains could not pull that fly down. So you have to think in terms of your fly getting down on its own. Once you've done that, you can use very long leaders off the end of your sink tips, because you don't have to worry about the fly being pulled down. It gets down by itself. And if you use fluorocarbon, that stuff sinks very, very well. You don't have to worry about the leader holding it up. So now you've got a situation where you can get vertical and horizontal separation between the end of your sink tip and your fly. So one thing, you can use lower density sink tips. You don't have to go really super heavy. That opens up a whole new ballgame on how we cast and how we fish if we can get to use lighter sink tips. Also, if you're fishing in clear water, you're getting a lot of separation and you're much less likely to spook fish. We don't really appreciate how often we push a fish out of a run. Because when we're fishing a sink tip, we see this. If my sleeve is the floating portion of the fly line and my hand is the sink tip, this is what it looks like coming through the water. You think it's going straight. It's not. And the proof of that is when you snag up. When you snag up, the fly isn't here. It's over there. So when you pick up, you find you're pointing that way when your floater is pointing that way, and when you pick up, your fly's over there. It shows you how much your fly is lagging. When it's lagging that much, it means your sink tip is what shows to the fish first. And if it's low down because you put a lot of sink tip on it, you know, a lot of T14 or maybe even T18, T17 to get down there because you've got a high drag fly, that sink tip is down in the fish's face before the fly arrives. Guess what? The fish ain't sticking around. It's gone. I had a friend out west who, after listening to me talk about long leaders, started using them, and he said it's tremendous improvement in his catch rate. Because all of a sudden he's not pushing fish out of the run with the sink tip. So the ability to use lighter tips, less dense tips, longer leaders that give you more movement on the fly, it doesn't look tethered, that you get vertical and horizontal separation so you don't run into presentation problems, especially in clear water. All of a sudden you start to get all these benefits. And the key is to have a fly that penetrates well and has low drag so it will sink on its own. And when you've got flies that'll do that, then it opens up this whole gamut of things that you can do. And your catch rate will be improved. Trust me on that one. So give it a try. So check out my downforce flies, and you can see how they're put together. You don't have to copy them exactly. It's concept rather than exact matches of the pattern. But if you get that idea of flies that are sparse, that penetrate well, that sink very fast, you'll be able to use very long leaders off your end of your sink tips, and your catch rate will significantly improve. And this opens up a whole world of possibilities, the things you can do. So check this out and keep that in mind. Long fluorocarbon leaders off your sink tips work extremely well. So give it a try. Cheers.